Well, all eyes are on Washington today. Friday, all eyes were on Alaska, possibly for the first time in world history. But that was when Vladimir Putin came in from the cold in Alaska, of all places, in Anchorage, to be greeted by Donald Trump with a red carpet treatment. And they basically hammered out this kind of it started off supposed to be talks about a ceasefire, then they upped the ante and said it would be a permanent peace, but it clearly involves the cessation of vast amounts of territory by Ukraine. That has always been a deal breaker for Zelensky. Presumably the European leaders, including Starmer, who are going to fly across the Atlantic today to meet Donald Trump, will stand with Zelensky and say no land. There'll be no land given away, at which point I assume Trump will say, all right, you're on your own. We're not going to waste any more money on this. You can spend your money on. That's the way I see it panning out. But you never know. Perhaps some kind of peace will be reached. But it's going to involve a lot of ramifications. Let's talk to Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry, former NATO commander. Hello, Chris.
Yeah, good morning, Ken.
Well, listen, let's talk about one of the elements of a potential peace. I think a peace deal here, if as seems likely it's going to involve Ukraine giving up land, is very, very unlikely. I think they'll have to turn around and say, well, no, we're not going to do it. But let's just say that they reach some kind of accord. They are now talking about a kind of NATO peacekeeping outfit, you know, preserving the status quo in Ukraine. I mean, what are the realities of that? So we achieve peace, sort of a peace. Putin agrees, okay, I'll pull out as long as you give me Donbass and all that kind of thing. And then there's a peacekeeping force in Ukraine. What will that look like? Will it involve British boots on the ground? Do you see it as a realistic proposition?
Well, Kevin, I mean, there are too many unanswered questions at the moment. Nobody would go to an armistice or peace in history on the basis of what we know right now. You're absolutely right. There are hints that Putin says he wants the whole Donbass region. He also wants the Crimea. So, you know, that's going to enable him to dominate the Black Sea. It'll also enable him to come back again anytime he likes. And it looks very much like Czechoslovakia in 1938. I'll take the Sudetenland, and next year I'll come back and get the rest. There's no guarantee. We don't yet know what arrangements are in place to guarantee Ukraine's integrity beyond that. Is it going to be NATO Article 5, in which case you've got a situation where if Russia decides to step over the line, Russia's at war with NATO. We don't want to risk that. Are we really seriously considering putting NATO troops into Ukraine, the one thing that Putin said started this conflict? So when it comes to Keir Starmer and Macron and all these other people saying we're going to put peacekeeping troops in Ukraine, I don't see Putin accepting that one little bit. Similarly, unless you're equipped, trained, and enabled to fight and kill the Russians, you're not going to deter them. So the idea we're going to send trainers and engineers to deal with the landmines and things like that. I mean, again, I'm very cynical about this, Kevin. After 3 years of fighting a war in the 21st century, are we seriously going to go and teach the Ukrainians how to fight the Russians? I mean, it is beyond parody. And I'm reminded of a discussion between a small island called Milos and Athens during the Peloponnesian War. And Milos said, look, we'd like to remain neutral between you and Sparta. And the Athenians said, look, you know, only great powers talk about things like this. The fact of life is the strong do what they can and the weak do what they must. And I'm afraid the Europeans are in that position right now in relation to what is agreed between the US, Russia and Ukraine itself.
Yeah, good words there, Chris. But if they do come to some kind of a deal today, I'm asking you really what you think of the coalition of the willing. They love to call themselves that. They've made a lot of noises. Oh, if America pulls out, it'll be down to us. We'll be the new kind of aggressors who will keep Russia at bay and all that. I just look at these countries. I look at France, Macron, and Germany, Merz, and all the other, you know, Italy, for God's sake, and Meloni. Do you trust these people to become the coalition of the willing if America pulls out? Or do you fear, as I do, that when push comes to shove, this lot will fall apart at the seams and Ukraine will probably be left on its own? I cannot see the French or the Germans going in, and I would hope kind of that Keir wouldn't be too keen on that either. But if we're, you know, can you see the coalition of the willing actually stepping up to the plate if push comes to shove? I can't.
Kevin, in 1939, we had a coalition of the willing to save Poland from the Nazis. The problem was we weren't a coalition of the willing and able. And I'm afraid we've got the same problem here. We might be willing to go and help Ukraine. We might be willing to go and deter Russia, but we haven't got the capability alone. In Europe, we need the Americans on board for this. We need their air power, we need their logistics, we need their armaments industry to help us. We also need a lot of money. And frankly, we can't even defend our own country at the moment, let alone defend Ukraine. So unless I see a strategic concept here that enables us to do this, I'm going to be very skeptical. At the end of the day, as I said, unless you're prepared to fight the Russians, you're not going to deter them. And the Russians will be keen to come back and finish the job, I can tell you now.
Chris, that was really interesting. Thank you so much for your time. Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry there, CBE, former NATO commander, like me, being very sceptical, shall we say, cynical about the potential outcomes of today. I can't see anything coming out of it except for, you know, Trump saying, take this deal or leave it. If you leave it, it means you don't want peace. Zelensky, backed by Europe, is going to say, well, you know, I always said we're never going to give any land over. So, you know, the Donbass and the Crimea, if Putin gets that, that means he kind of wins. So are Europe going to let this happen? And if they're not going to let it happen, just how much are they prepared to back up their tough talking words? I don't know. Interesting times, to say the least.